you said the players are full-throated in support of Mike McCarthy. The play on the field certainly does not support that. That I said it when I came on the show on Monday. You used the Q word as well, quit. It looked like they quit in the middle of that game. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's soundbite of this week saying he started preparing for the Packers in the middle of the second quarter certainly landed here, and I'm sure it did in the Metroplex as well. So when you talk to the players, what do they say that they like about Mike McCarthy?
Well, it didn't translate well on Twitter. So because, as you know, we live in times, Rich, where people like to aggregate our content and then decide parse what they think is the narrative. And so my mistake was that I should have said this on a show like yours or on the NFL Network instead of tweet it. But for the most part, the players love the fact that he cares about them as men. You know, what I was described with, whether it be Dan Quinn or Mike McCarthy, what goes on between the shoulders and the head. He cares about where you are mentally. And he talked a little bit about that today, too. You know, Dak's got a mental health coach. I think that Mike understands sometimes the pressures that come with this job. But I think more importantly, as an outsider coming into Dallas, he knows the pressures that come with the star on the helmet. There's also his GPS system and his quarterback school and sort of the attention to stats. And he's been more aggressive as a coach when you look at the way they go for it at times. You know, the way that he rests their bodies, I think that's huge when you talk to a lot of players. You know, the one thing I was told about Jason Garrett was he had really, really hard practices. And I'm not saying Mike's aren't, but Mike is more about collecting data. How much time does Tyron Smith need on the field? How much time does Micah Parsons need on the field? Can they have a veteran rest day so it allows them to have longevity within their bodies? Something as simple as bringing their families up there on Saturdays to interact with one another or step away from a meeting and tell someone you appreciate their support. And again, fans are hearing me say this and they're rolling their eyes. It sounds like Camp Cupcake up there. But my point is, he believes in them as men. I mean, the whole sleeping in their beds instead of hotel rooms when they have home games. I mean, look at their record this year with the exception of that playoff game. They played really, really well, and everyone kept trying to put their finger on, well, why are they playing so well? A lot of the players pointed to that. Now, where this story blew up and took on a life of its own was I added, one player did tell me that there was concern about a stubbornness to the scheme sometimes. In other words, they knew sometimes that other teams knew exactly what Dallas was going to do, and they didn't adjust accordingly. And so, like, even Dan Quinn, motion offense is really killing him this year. And then another line that blew up was that one said that they thought that Dak Prescott can sometimes panic when his first read's not there, but we know that when they get the ball to CeeDee Lamb, good things happen. Now, everyone thought that was a rat, a leak, an indictment of the locker room. I think the headline, I won't name the colleague, was that it was backstabbing. That's not what it was. It was, I think everybody is evaluating what is going on with this team. Why did certain things work? And I think everyone from coach to Dak to Jerry are evaluating, where am I doing this wrong? Now, whether those things get fixed, I don't know. But I think all of those are on the table as evidenced by Mike saying that they had a 3-hour meeting.
So is Dan Quinn going to be part of the running it back? What do you think?
I think last year we thought he was going to Denver, right? And then all of a sudden he was back in Dallas. And in talking to his players, they said that they respected that he came back because he thought that there was unfinished business. You know, some of these job openings, they look really appealing sometimes, Rich. And then you get in there and you realize maybe the system doesn't make sense. Ask a lot of the Cowboys players when they go to another organization, they're like, wow, we've got it pretty good around here in Frisco with Jerry Jones. And so I don't know if that's going to be part of this. For Dan Quinn, there's also a lot of responsibilities that come with being a head coach. I do know that he loves his players. I do know that those players want to get one for him. We'll just kind of have to see how this shakes out. But it sounds like they're open to the idea of him returning. But I also think you've got to consider, you know, our boy Adrian in research at NFL Network, I had him pull some numbers. Dan Quinn seems, we don't always talk about the defense and how it plays. They're really, really good against bad teams. But this year they were even worse against some of the good teams. And so they didn't get better at beating the good teams this year or get better at beating the bad teams this year. They kind of got worse with some of those good teams.
Yeah, the Cowboys. The Cowboys.
So I think you've got to consider that.
Yeah, the Cowboys had that narrative for a while up until they beat Philadelphia at home. But who have you really beaten? And then they, wound up losing to Buffalo and Miami and then pulled it out at the end to get into what appeared to be the catbird seat, the number 2 seed overall. But I think, just wrapping up our conversation here, and I understand why you asked about why fans should buy in, because everything you're telling me is like, hey, everything works. Players love it here. The coach loves it here. Quinn loves it here. They love the coach and they love Quinn. And then they lay an egg against Green Bay. And the question is like, well, we don't want to change. Everything's working here. Well, maybe you should change it, because what's been working doesn't work when it matters most. And the way to switch it up right now has a remarkable amount of decorated candidates sitting there saying, I'll take your job if you offer it, or have a conversation about it. That's about it.
And I think, Rich, the hard part, too, was everything started going their way, right? Like, it almost felt like this is too good to be true. I mean, we're talking 5 seed, you're a 2 seed. You are your best team when you're at home. Then we're talking injuries. I mean, right before the game, we found out Jair Alexander was playing and then Christian Watson. But Jair Alexander went out in the fourth quarter, and then now all of a sudden they start scoring at times, but I felt like they could have capitalized. And then why are you running the ball against that team? If you're going to establish an identity early, why aren't you taking some of those deep shots? And so everybody, I think, is to blame. And I think as we talk about the Cowboys, you have 16 free agents. They've got to figure out what are we going to do with next year. I think all of that's going to be on the table, because I think now you've got to also look at personnel. Like, do you have the right fits here? And has Jerry and company been aggressive enough at maybe getting you some players? This offseason, I've heard talk about Derrick Henry. Yeah, Derrick could be great here. He works out a lot here in the offseason at Sanders Fit. Yeah, that makes sense. They would love him. But you still got to pay CD. You got to pay Micah. You got to figure out what you're going to do with Dax Con. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they've got to figure out.
Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.